This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
What's going on, everybody? How's everyone doing? Thumbs up if you can hear me okay. We're going to get this party started. Awesome. Okay, guys, let's get the show on the road. For those who are listening right now, whether it is live or a recording, let's get a little introduction of what THORChain is. So THORChain is a decentralized exchange that enables you to swap Bitcoin with thousands of other cryptocurrencies. It's all layer 1 to layer 1. Native tokens, no bridges, no swap wrap tokens, nothing like that. There's no KYC on THORChain. It is permissionless, so you do not have to worry about any third parties telling you what you can and cannot do. THORChain's token is called Rune, and that is spelled R-U-N-E. You don't need to buy or hold Rune in order to place a swap on THORChain. The fee is deducted from the starting asset, right? So if that's Bitcoin, it comes from Bitcoin to Rune or whatever. Very awesome design decision we've made. This Rune is the yield that goes to liquidity pools and nodes. There are no block rewards on THORChain. 100% of the yield is real. THORChain has another token called TCY. This token is like a preferred stock. 10% of the protocol's revenue goes to these token holders. If you deposit crypto into savers or were part of the lending function, make sure to claim your TCY token so you can start collecting this yield. Anyone can buy TCY token as well. To swap on THORChain, go to THORChain.com, click on swap. You'll see all the wallets and websites that use THORChain, and you can choose the interface that you want to use. Rujira is building decentralized Binance on THORChain smart contract layer. It's being rolled out as we speak. Make sure to check that out. Speaking of Binance, if you hold Rune on a centralized exchange, you should withdraw it immediately and put it into self-custody because these tokens could be used to short sell Rune and drive price down on you. Once in self-custody, you should look into bonding your Rune to a node. Runebond.com is a great option, by the way, and earn some yield and help you secure the network, which can help drive up the Rune price. There's a THORChain community Discord and Telegram. You can join them to learn all about THORChain and make a lot of friends. To find the links, go to THORChain community account on X. Please repost the space, guys. Let's get some people in here. If you were listening to the recording, repost it. We've always got some good stuff. It is high signal, low noise in a THORChain space. You guys know how it is. Also, for node operators, make sure to vote on the 8 to 5 basis points vote and ADR 20. If that's still applicable, I think it is. But either way, let's get started, guys. My name's Patriot Sounds, educator with THORChain. Been doing spaces for a while now. I'm going to go ahead and kick it to Kenton. He can introduce himself, and then we're going to talk about the man, the myth, the legend, the OG that is here joining us today.
Thanks, Patriot. Great intro. I like it when you do it. Much better than me. Hey, everyone, my name's Kenton Ralph Toes. I have a fund that invests in Rune and runs nodes on THORChain. And so I'm a node operator and bond provider. And yeah, that's me.
Always a legend. Love Kenton. Kenton is the man. I'm going to go ahead. Paper X, sir. Go ahead and give an introduction about yourself. How you doing, man?
Hey guys. Doing good. Just been at GM Vietnam, which is the biggest blockchain conference here in Vietnam, in Hanoi. Spreading the good word about cross-chain swaps, decentralized cross-chain swaps, like THORChain, and all things of that good nature. I'm being a long-time community member, user of THORChain, and being building with the THORSwap project since 2021, and recently you also contributed to SwapKit as the integration solution for THORChain, and recently returned back to being being the lead contributor at THORSwap. I must apologize, but these conferences have a lot of loud music at side events, so my voice is a bit dead. But thanks so much for inviting me to join this space, and looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, don't worry about the audio at all, man. You sound absolutely great, and it's a pleasure to have you. I haven't talked to you in quite a while, which is really a shame. Think you're a great guy. You've always been a wonderful human, and a great contributor to this community. So, hey, man, go ahead. Like, what's going on over there at THORSwap? You got any updates for us? The floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I was on the last spaces, right? But had a bit of a technical glitch.
Yeah, I mean,
And I
but
think we,
not. Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, not like talk to you like one on one. To
all
really
right.
lay it down.
I felt
I
pretty
haven't
bad
forgotten.
because like for anybody listening, the Spaces is glitchy and it keeps dropping on us sometimes. And just when you're coming up paper to chat about THORSwap, it was like the universe conspired against us, and it just kept getting rugged on the space. So sorry, man. I'm glad you came back to do it this time. So hopefully you got.
Appreciate it. I mean, Tyler was on, and always good to hear from him. So wanted to let him have space last time. Thanks for inviting me back. Yeah, I mean, THORSwap. Like I guess to continue our last conversation. We were one of the first interfaces front ends for THORChain, and obviously, well, since BitSwap days on single chain chaosnet, right? And we shipped based on community feedback, we shipped a THORChain dedicated interface called Rune Edition. I think a week and a half ago. It's been a while. I mean, time moves really fast in DeFi. And yeah, it's THORChain routes only, and has all the goodness of all the bonding, Thor names, multi-sig, like all the tools that you might need to use for THORChain, and obviously swaps, and supports all the chains, and I've lost count of how many wallets we support, but yeah, everything a user might need to do THORChain functionality. Swaps, manage cross-chain names, all that goodness. And yeah, as we kicked it off with by making the default pair to Bitcoin Rune. So and we put 50% discount on Rune buys. So hopefully that really encourages people to check out the Rune token and everything you can do with it. Yeah, glad to hear Rune Bond is also doing really well. We put that on the side menu and hopefully encourages more community bonding. Yeah, so that's kind of the latest update on what we ship on THORSwap. There's a lot of stuff on the back end. We're actually doing quite a significant update on the SDK side. Well, it's in partnership with SwapKit, because THORSwap runs exclusively on SwapKit SDK and API. The SDK is open source, and it's going through a pretty major updates from version 3 to version 4. So there's a lot of bug testing and optimization that's necessary before we ship all of that. So it's delayed a few things, but we managed to get some wallets shipped and some bug fixes out the door. So if we're not making noise on socials, it's usually just priority is just taking a look at, okay, what's the pain points in the support tickets, what are the bugs people having issue with. Even as really like edge cases, we want to kind of make sure that gets fixed, because ultimately what's most important for us is the it's the swappers, it's the users, right? There's no point having all this liquidity and all this great tech if no one uses it. So anything that kind of hinders any users from being able to swap, being able to use the services, is obviously highest priority for us. So yeah, kind of every couple of weeks we go through a round of obviously bug fixes and making sure things are sorted. But that's kind of the main thing. What am I missing? Yeah, I mean, we just completed a month-long community survey. Thank you everyone for the support on that. I think we've got over 300 like submissions, which is really amazing, and really great to see. Also, it's quite split quite evenly, across our social media. I made two forms actually, like one for our social media, and one for like the app itself. So it's great to see that we have a pretty diverse range of users, from those that follow us actively on socials, but also just like users themselves. And that's given us really great feedback towards what we've been building for a while, which is a big redesign of THORSwap from the ground up. As a front end, we're calling our V3. Those of you who've been using us for a while, you might remember we did a big V2 update, and that's kind of how we shipped the last one as well. There's a lot of feedback, and we have our plans and roadmap, which I wrote out, a while ago when I came back and should sort of outline some milestones and our vision for what we're shipping for the rest of this year, and yeah, making pretty good progress on that. A lot of it is not the prettiest at the moment, but it's a lot of very core UX design things that we really want to improve upon, and that's going great. And so what's going to happen is we're moving towards building a closed beta that is for those who, if you left your so like Discord handle, or like in the at the end of the survey, then we're gonna invite you to try it out and give us some great feedback on towards building V3. So yeah, that's kind of the latest on THORSwap.
That's great, man. Maybe we should touch on quick your survey. Let's get the message out there so you can get more responses. How do people fill out this survey if they want to participate? And what kind of questions are you asking for? What kind of feedback are you looking for?
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, I mean, anyone can still fill out survey, of course. I meant like month long, as in I just had to set a date on it, because we're giving some, drawing prizes and like all of that stuff, as a like small incentive. But yeah, actually, if you go to THORSwap, there should be like a little pop up, like if you haven't closed it by now, that says, hey, please, help us out with the survey. I think it's like pretty easy to spot. So, yeah, it's a really kind of top down and well, ground up, like holistic, just view of like what why a user might want to use THORSwap, or what is the biggest pain point, and just generally I think very concentrated on the UX and UI and the overall just motivation to kind of ensure that we're focused on the right thing, right? Because I think for us, we make obviously it's our core ethos and our belief in self custody and decentralized services, but we always want to make sure that users are, we're kind of aligned on that, right? And if it's anything that, well, I mean, you know that we had the hashtag better than sex, like like tagline for ages now. Like I haven't changed it for years. And actually, I've seen a lot of newer protocols that picked up this tagline. And I think it's just a sign of the times, right? But yeah, I feel like to be perfectly honest, it's an aspiration. Like I'm not gonna sit here and say like, oh, we already better, right? There's a lot of room for improvement. In particular UX, right? It's multi-chain UX is very complicated, and yeah, there's a lot of barriers, and we want to make sure we solve them without compromising also on just the core ethos of like self custody and security, and just users, I guess, understanding the tech, but also having a big degree of convenience. And yeah, that's a really fun balance to draw. But yeah, I guess the survey is mainly to try and identify the pain points, and I guess maybe what products that we don't currently offer that you might be interested in. Yeah, it's a little bit long, I must say, but I think it's given us really, really good feedback, and a lot of really good data to work with. So yeah,
Okay.
it shouldn't take more than 5 minutes, to be honest. But yeah, that's what the
Okay.
survey's for.
So if I want to fill it out, you go to thorswap.finance and you go enter the app, and then there should be a pop-up to ask you to fill out the survey. Is that how it goes?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Or you go to highlights. Like if you go to our page, and if you go to highlights, there should be a link to it. Actually, I might just share it in the comments here, and maybe you can pin it.
Yeah, share in the comments, and guys, retweet it, post it out there. The more data, the better, right? We can get you from 300 to 3,000 responses. That'll be right.
Yeah, that'd be
I know
amazing.
it's
I
a
think I've
lot,
been
but yeah.
Yeah, I've been sharing a bit of snippets on some really good like feedback from time to time when we reward like we pick winners and stuff. But I hope to do some good analysis on it, and then I'll share it with the community from I think it'll be really good, just feedback for all of us building and THORChain and just DeFi in general, I think.
No, great, good on you, good initiative. So you mentioned, okay, you made a THORChain edition. How do I get to it? I'm at
It's just
thorswap.finance. I entered the
yeah, it's
app.
rune. Yeah, it's rune.thorswap.finance. So instead of app.thorswap.finance, it's just
So
rune.thorswap.finance.
we have to manually enter it in. There's no link on your website.
Uh, yeah, you're right. Actually, we should base something on the landing page. That's a good point. These are the good feedback we're looking for. So yeah, for now, it's just I had a pinned to our page, but I recently just changed the. Oh, actually, no, it is still pinned to our page. So that's the first thing you see if you go to THORSwap here on X. And yeah, we chat across all socials. But yeah, let me make a note of it. We could definitely add a link somewhere.
Yeah, even in the when I go to your homepage, I enter app, maybe a link in there somewhere under THORChain. You could have Rune Edition or something like that.
Yeah, that the homepage is going a redesign as well. It's been a while since we updated it, but yeah, sometimes you get like the these good to haves,
Yeah.
just so much to share, right? Like a lot of new features and
Okay,
preferences.
so Rune Edition, is it just what's the difference? Main difference between Rune Edition and uh, Legacy THORSwap, for lack of a better term? Is it just roots going through THORChain? Is it just you mentioned the 50% off fees on buying Rune? Is it just off buying
Oh,
Rune or
NTCY, right?
and TCY? Okay. Yeah. Can you explain a bit more there, please?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the gist of it. Other than the rune colors, of course. Yeah, it's like we've kind of doubled down on all the good, important things for THORChain users. So, I mean, we've already, have obviously all the LPs and, like Thor name, like the wallet management. I don't know how you guys use the THORChain multisig, but yeah, we built that feature back in the day. That's still there, and Thor node bonding management as well. So that's all the core stuff, right? And then, we added links to like THORChain explorers and Rune Bond, and again, if anyone else has like recommendations of other community good resources and room tools, we added that to the side menu as well. But yeah, for now it's really focused on just delivering the dedicated core THORChain like swap experience, right? So it's a sort of pure THORChain experience.
So the only routes here are THORChain pools, or is it still full DEX segregation that you can access on the normal
Uh,
THORSwap?
I th- it's THORChain pools, and let me double check the explanation because I think we had a small issue we had to solve on that side. Let me see if swap in and swap out are working. But our dextrogation is primarily through THORChain at the moment. So if you enable it, it would be also just the THORChain dextrogation routes. So if you go from Bitcoin to ETH to Pepe or something, like or Bitcoin to BNB to Cake, on Pancake or something, it'll be through THORChain.
Okay, cool. I'm just kind of playing around with the site now. Nice. So maybe some people might be new here, Paper, and like maybe they're not familiar with the history of THORSwap, but THORSwap was like you guys are like the preeminent THORChain front end when THORChain first launched into mainnet, right? Um, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as I wasn't actually part of the team during the BEP swap days, but from what I've been told, and I'm very happy to correct it on this. Essentially, when THORChain was building on Binance BEP2 chain, at the time was called single chain chaos net, right? So it was kind of just testing this AMM model on Binance Beacon chain, and which is no longer actually exists, but at the time it was called BetSwap, and that was funded directly by the treasury, and essentially, it was what was the core product, right? And once THORChain into multi-chain chaosnet, so it was like I think it was like Bitcoin ETH was the main one to get solved, right? It was really opened up to community to build interfaces for THORChain. So it was like Scatix, THORSwap. And I think after a while, I think Scatix might not wasn't maintained for a period of time, and I guess in the beginning of THORChain, most of the functionality was like you had to use THORSwap for it. But it was like everybody became like independent projects at that point. So yeah, and obviously we've been supporting THORChain, all the THORChain features ever since, and yeah, it's been a few years, like from 2021. I guess we kind of share the same birthday with THORChain, really, right? Because THORChain's like um, late April, May, if you count that as like the birthday of entering mainnet and things like that. And THORSwap is essentially that's when THORSwap was officially launched as well. So.
Yeah, and like when you guys, whenever, like when you launch, like the same birthday, like you had all the features live for THORChain, and every time a new feature comes out on THORChain, you guys integrate it right away. It's like THORSwap is like usually pretty much always the first platform to integrate every new feature on THORChain, right? And so it's kind of made, for the longest time, made THORSwap like the de facto THORChain interface because you supported all the functionality. Um, I'm not. Is that right? I'm not aware of any other front end. Maybe AsgardX, but you guys, I want to say you're even quicker than AsgardX on supporting features.
In the early days, yeah, it's 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, AsgardX back in the day was maintained by a dev called, I think it was Vito. And I think he left. And then, yeah, THORSwap was the flagship. Like when it came to all the new features and everything, they were pretty much always the first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a while it was slightly easier because there was a StageNet, so we would, in this chain integration, so we could test it on StageNet. Although obviously there's like very shallow liquidity, so it was kind of hard to test like proper swaps. But after a while, we shut down StageNet, so it became this kind of pretty, I would say, exciting and dramatic, but very all hands on deck, like releases, right? And recently, I think we slowed down a little bit just because I think we've come to realize, like, yeah, we could just ship support on day one, as we've done, but sometimes it's a little bit irresponsible for users, and also, the Torchain Treasury also no longer, automatically kickstarts pools with like a certain amount of liquidity, right? So it's much safer to say like, hey, let's take our time and make sure chain integrations and features are tested and everything works well, and hopefully chains will have like good decent liquidity first, and if not, we can make sure like, okay, this much it's safe before users get completely wrecked on slippage or something. So I think these days we tend to try and be just like a couple of days like later than quote unquote like official launches of features, but of course we generally try to ship support for THORChain features and chains and just everything as much as possible.
Yeah, that's great. Like part of the reason I want to go over a little history with that is that I need to apologize to you because I made a post and I wrote THORSwap is not loyal to THORChain, and it was a really poor choice of words on my part, and because you guys have been huge supporters of THORChain, and yeah, I shouldn't have said that. It was wrong to say it like that. Um, what I was trying to say is just THORSwap isn't dedicated to THORChain was more my intention. So it's not that you guys aren't helpful and great and provide a great service for THORChain, because you do, and you have and you still do. So that's great. I think you guys do good. So thank you.
Oh, no apologies needed, man. Like, I mean, I think I mean, frankly speaking, obviously we have to be responsible and loyal to our users and Thor token community holders. And the thing is, I think most of them are also THORChain community, right? And THORChain. So, it's really not like a two parties against each other thing, right? So as far as I'm concerned, we obviously have a huge history with THORChain. So yeah, I mean, as obviously in my like personal like standpoint, like I always try to consider things from the perspective of users. So personally, I've had times that I would like debate with devs on the dev Discord about certain things, and just trying to offer the user perspective, right? Or just like perspective of like LPs. This is like this multifaceted when you consider like what makes someone a THORChain community member or a user or a rune holder or whatever product, a user of the swaps or a user of like LPing and like saving and yield and lending and like all these things, right? So and I think that's good. That makes like that's what makes a community diverse, right? And if I wasn't, yeah, I don't know, loyalty is the right word, but if I wasn't passionate about THORChain, obviously I would just like be like, I just wouldn't care, right? And I think that's probably like way worse than anything else, really. So yeah, I mean, that's my personal perspective, but I think it's shared by many, contributors on the team. Just maybe not, maybe not everyone's as vocal as me sometimes. And again, if I'm not being vocal, I'm probably just like really kind of heads down working on things, right? So, hopefully, it's making the actual experience better for users. So, overall, like everyone benefits from that. So, yeah.
That's great, man. Well, you talk about focusing on user experience. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Do you have a problem with THORChain having its own front end that would in essence compete with THORSwap? Does that bother you guys or not? Are you indifferent? Do you support it? What are your thoughts?
I mean, if I put my swap hat on, I guess like the position is always being, um, like we want to be making sure we have the best chain swap experience. Um, but obviously, I see the counter argument of like, hey, there should be a dedicated front end, and I think that's also why we shipped like the Rune edition, right? If it's a matter about like, I guess like the fees part of it, right? I think it's kind of it's a bit subjective because all I can say is really from my personal perspective, which is you know um it's the motivation, it's really about like kind of the sustainability of something like that, right? And I think and obviously the end goal really is to grow like THORChain. It I suppose the added benefit is to bring more value to Rune. And that's like when it comes to like token price increase, that's just something like everyone has a view on like what can make it happen, but at the end of the day the market does its thing, right? So yeah, like value accrual is a different, like um it's a very difficult subject in crypto in general, I think, because like overall, this is a weird philosophical question because we are a cross-chain, multi-chain protocol, right? If there's any protocol out there that shouldn't be, saying like, okay, value should only flow to one, token or one asset. It's us, right? We're Dex. We want to be just saying like, hey, it's a free market. Like, if you like Bitcoin, you can buy Bitcoin. If you like, Doge, you should buy Doge. Like, it's not, you should be able to buy Doge. It's a free market. And same with Rune with or Thor token or whatever it may be, and everyone just has to kind of come up with our own um like kind of value proposition, right? So I guess for us, like all we can do is say like, hey, we want to make sure ThorSwap is the best like cross-chain DEX, and obviously all of our ThorChain features. If anyone wants to use ThorChain features, we should be the best place to like for them to do that, and we can only focus on what we can do, right? I'm definitely not gonna go out of my way and say like, oh, you guys shouldn't do this because it's a decentralized like protocol, right? It's just like no one should have that power, right? So yeah, I would hope like, I guess, the like our history track record would mean people, if they want to use THORChain features or swaps, they can, understand what we've built over time, and obviously all the loss and everything that we use and our support, that yeah, they can be confident in using THORSwap. And especially Rune Edition, they'll get like a kickback, or they'll use referral system and they get the discount, and hopefully that kind of incentivizes them to use it. But yeah, it's like we did this for the like over a year, I think, at the beginning, from 2021 to 2022. Like THORSwap was like entirely free, right? And even after some of the other products, like LPing, or lending and savers, like we never charged a fee on any of the features. So building tool names and all this stuff is really just like, because we were so we appreciated that THORChain community is obviously a lot of our users, and obviously we were very close to the protocol. So so swaps is kind of our main, bread and butter, and that's what keeps the, our project going, right? So we obviously have a responsibility to our community, and I have a responsibility to our contributors to make sure we have a sustainable business. So yeah, I mean that's kind of THORSwap's perspective on it. If I were to speak for THORSwap, but I don't know if this is like too roundabout way, but obviously I don't have any you know interest in saying like, oh, I think THORChain should do X or Y, right? I can only speak on either the user's perspective or our own like perspective as THORSwap. So yeah, I don't know if that really answers your question.
Yeah, it does. If I'm hearing you right, I don't. It sounds like you don't have a big problem about it, or it's like you acknowledge it's out of your control. But what I like to hear is that you mentioned the user perspective, and like that for me, that's my point of view. Is like from a user perspective, when Patriot is out there telling people to use THORChain, we have an easy way to show them how to use it, and which I think is important for THORChain to help grow itself. Because like I said, like you guys, THORSwap is a de facto, which is fine. We're always sending people to THORSwap, but then you guys integrated Chainflip in Near, which is totally fine. But from THORChain's point of view, it's like, well, it doesn't serve us to send people to a platform that's going to route the trade somewhere else. Like we need, if from THORChain's point of view, if we want to tell people to use THORChain, we want them to use THORChain. So yeah, it's just like, yeah. I hope
I think,
that makes sense.
yeah, one thing I was thinking, Paper, because there's some XRP actually people in here listening, and welcome guys, I'm glad you're here. I've been making a lot of overtures to other communities and trying to essentially get new blood and proselytize and tell them the world of decentralized permissionless swaps. And then with this new integration, I was thinking, this actually might be a really good opportunity for THORSwap, right? Because it's Tron, and I don't really know much about Tron, but my understanding it is, a heavily, the language is a Mandarin, and I don't speak that at all. I was wondering, like, what are you guys thinking about strategies of how to on ramp new blood into the system? Because Tron, that would be supported on THORChain, and that might be a really good way to get to the user base. So, like, just a general question line. So I know you're at a conference right now. What are you thinking about, like on ramping people? Like with Tron, like are people excited about cross-chain swaps? Could you just speak a little bit about that? Sorry, that question was kind of a spaghetti I threw at you.
Yeah, sure. If you're if you're happy to move on from the previous topic, yeah, no, absolutely. We always right, like every single chain integration. I mean, sometimes like I tell people that sometimes it really depends on the market condition. Because you know, I just remember in like it's really because I know we're all in this ecosystem that we all believe the same thing, right? Which is crypto deserves decentralized cross-chain swaps. Like, that's like a no-brainer to us. But yeah, if you step outside, like, if you just look at central exchange usage, right, and just like the volume and all that stuff, you realize there's just so much work to be done, right? And even ecosystems, like we always think like, oh, liquidity should flow freely, but often it's not the case. It just sometimes depends on market conditions, like when we were in a bear market, I just remember there were chain integrations, and I would try to reach out to this foundation or try to reach out to these teams, and and then you realize like, oh, actually, they don't want to be connected to Bitcoin because the liquidity will be exiting the ecosystem just because that's just the nature of the market at the time. So they would rather like have a closed off ecosystem, right? And again, that's like the value accrual thing I was talking about before. Like we think liquidity and value should just free flow, like the free market should just do a thing, but if you are a ecosystem, you have like other considerations, right? And that's just the nature of the situation. So, but yeah, like often, we have to think about it from why a user would use our service, right? Obviously, they'll care about, they don't want KYC, they want choice, like an assets choice, and they want, like ideally big good service, competitive pricing, and good execution, and so obviously, we think like, oh, we should go to Bitcoin conferences, but then maybe you have a lot of Bitcoiners who don't want to swap cross-chain, right? Because they just believe like only in Bitcoin. And yeah, so it's about bridging that gap because Bitcoin is still the biggest volume driver. So and it's like 60 something percent of the crypto market cap right now as well. So I think in this current market cycle stage, ecosystems will be interested to be connecting to Bitcoin just because they want the liquidity flow to their ecosystem, right? Hopefully, fingers crossed, the altcoin season actually starts, right? So yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting use cases, and yeah, I'm learning a lot about Tron. The funny thing about us, like shipping Tron, a little bit early, is that yeah, we realized like there's a lot of complex UXs that have to be designed almost like specifically for Tron, and that's something we've been trying to work on. Like at the moment, it's not even perfect, just because. Um, you would think Tron is like super cheap and easy to do transactions and swaps, but actually, the biggest use case is USDT, right? And USDT on Tron is actually surprisingly expensive if you don't stake TRX to lower gas fees. They have this whole energy bandwidth system, and if you're a big TRX staker, then you have like basically a lot of like free daily energy to do transactions. But if you don't, then yeah, you could be paying up to like $8 or $10, like just to swap on USDT, and which is obviously like a lot more expensive than even Ethereum. So yeah, we're trying to work out ways to like collaborate with Tron protocols to be able to they have this like renting energy system thing, and hopefully we can help like make it a bit easier for users to do cross chain swaps. Because obviously it's a new ecosystem, a new technology, a new yeah, it's just things you have to do to kind of match that centralized exchange experience, obviously, because they don't deal with any of this. It's all just numbers on a spreadsheet somewhere, right? But yeah, there's a lot of quirks, and you guys have done like a great job, like interacting with the XRP community and learning their needs. We certainly talked to a few XRPL projects, and yeah, hopefully they'll be able to like make use of Swapget APIs to build something cool to be able to like onboard other ecosystem users to their projects and make this whole multi-chain experience like super seamless. And ultimately, I think users will benefit from that. But yeah, some of these things take a bit longer because it's always just like always seems like such a no-brainer. Because like, oh, you have like the centralized rails now, like it's available, like just go. But yeah, like it takes like iteration takes a long time. And then for users to make up their mind about why they will use this over existing services, sometimes like centralized, is it's quite difficult. So yeah, this is a big topic that I think about every day.
Paper, you mentioned a few projects on XRPL. Have you heard of First Ledger? That's XRPL's like meme coin DEX. And I'm wondering if you've tried reaching out to get their API so you can integrate it. Or yeah, do you know what I'm talking about?
I must admit, I have not looked into it. I mean, like, there's just a lot of stuff that we could be doing. In terms of aggregation, it's often like it's super good to have, but you think we ship like EVM aggregation, we ship aggregation for like Avalanche and like Pancake, like for BNB. But yeah, often like the tech is super awesome, right, to have, right? These routes are awesome to have, but they're very difficult to maintain. And yeah, like also sometimes if you don't see the volume, like of interest, then it's yeah, it's just it's a lot of resources needed, right? I think that's why maybe like not every THORChain integrator will go into the effort of building these things, because it's it's a lot of work for sure, but definitely wouldn't rule it out. It's just if you look at like um yeah, like there's so much we could be building, for sure. Obviously the main gas assets, the main ecosystems, like we can establish that like really solid, ongoing, partnerships and things like that. It's a good kind of motivation for us to like start building out some of these other things. And obviously if it's like teams native to the actual ecosystems and they want to like, be able to tap into, like THORChain swaps or something, like that makes it a lot easier, right? Because if we can support like, support them through like say Swapget API, and you see like a lot of like interest from their users, it means like, okay, well, it's interesting for us to build it further, right? And then this is me kind of like talking it's kind of Swapkit's behalf, but there's a lot of wallets that use that have THORChain routes available, and again, if they are motivated by seeing like, oh, there's interest in on the dexes, then like we should be pushing it on our wallets. So yeah, often it's a very chicken and egg issue. And yeah, I mean, like always open to talking to any ecosystem, like projects, right? I think that's the most fun thing about working with THORSwap is that if I go to like people think, oh, I'm always people go to conferences like partying or whatever, but like I think the most interesting thing is just being able to like step to a conference and just not having to deal with like, oh, I'm only this ecosystem or that. You can go to like most like projects and conferences, like, and you just almost pitch them this idea of like, oh, you could be multi-chain, you could be interoperable, you can onboard Bitcoin users, so you can it's like this idea that opens up a whole new world and paradigm for a lot of these projects. And yeah, there's a lot more work to do on that front.
Yeah, like because for me in my mind, like that's kind of one of the things that like with THORChain and the true cross chain dexes is that some people will say, oh well, there's no volume between these two chains, and it's like, and then therefore we shouldn't support it, shouldn't do it. It's like, well, maybe there's no volume because the path doesn't exist, right? Or the path is so arduous, nobody's taking the route, therefore there's no volume. Whereas the whole point of THORChain is to make these paths very easy to travel. And by opening up all these new paths, maybe that in turn creates the volume. So like in my mind, we should just be trying to connect as many different worlds as we can. And at some point, we're going to get like what am I trying to say? Like a tipping point. Like at some it's just inevitable before we get volume. We don't know exactly which paths are going to be successful, but we know that some of them are, and we just have to keep adding new ones and until it catches on. Do you disagree with that, or do you agree?
I think like connecting liquidity is just the beginning. What happens next is often, like I said, many different factors. Like, it's like markets. It's just sometimes it's also like a cultural fit as well. If like certain chains, like let's say Solana is very meme coin heavy, right? Like people are they just only in that ecosystem to do very specific things, and maybe they just have no interest in like doing anything with Bitcoin, or not, right? It's well, you definitely see like Bitcoin Solana swaps, but maybe not like say we have aggregation, maybe not some pump fund coin versus like to Bitcoin, because like the speed of the thing and just price, actually, I don't think that's maybe in the meme coin traders like perspective, like something that they're interested in. So, yeah, sometimes you can't force, like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink, right? Because maybe it's not like the river that they're interested in, right? They're not thirsty for that specific thing, and yeah, but ultimately, I think our value proposition has always been great. There's a lot of um projects and tokens and chains that popped up and died off because the narrative might have changed. But I always thought, I just sometimes I just introduce THORSwap as like a Bitcoin DEX because that's like easy thing to understand, because that's kind of what made us survive for so long, right? Like we can kind of experience up and downs, but thankfully Bitcoin is still here, and THORChain is definitely the first to do that, right? And I think that's like a great value proposition that really lays the foundation and everything. But yeah, it's definitely like the first step, and then what comes next is generally a lot of very complicated um um yeah, like circumstances, right? And it's easy to um say like, hey, maybe it's pricing, or maybe it's certain, like even say compared to like other routes on providers on THORSwap. I honestly think that's not like the main issue, because you just look at THORChain volume, like it's still growing, right? And you look at the number of integrations that Swapkit has enabled for THORChain, since just even in less than a year ago. It's a lot. But and I say this, like I post this about some of these stats like sometimes, but sometimes like the volume is like it's like dropping. And then if you look at why, it's because we're still like fighting, obviously a good fight, right? But we're still fighting against like centralized providers, whether it's actual centralized exchanges or it's just kind of like broker services, right? And they've had a head start on, just really getting these like swap services out there in wallets and in like, all these different services. They're very deeply ingrained, and they have the advantage of being centralized, right? It's a black box, right? If you look at all the sometimes like, you're looking at, oh, it's minor differences between like pricing, sometimes it's THORChain, sometimes it's another provider, but if you look at like wallets, often it's like 4 or 5 different centralized broker services, and they're all like floating rate or like whatever, right? And it's all a black box. Like you don't even know where the quote comes from. Like I posted one really funny recently where it's like I can punch in a 50 million Bitcoin swap, and it still give me a swap under like it's like 0.5 slip or something. It makes no sense, but these are the services that we're actually trying to compete with because they're so entrenched in wallets are just like everywhere. They have their fingers everywhere, and the users are using them. And integration is sometimes it's like just getting the hurdle of like convincing projects to integrate, decentralized services is difficult because they also very comfortable with like, oh, we have these swap providers already. Like, why do we need another one? So like you mentioned, oh, it should be easy once we have Bitcoin to say XRP, Bitcoin to Tron, but I was just talking to a project today, and then they're like, oh, I'm only interested in routes that we don't have. But then it's like, well, you have these routes, but they're all centralized providers, right? Their codes are all basically fake. So how do you not care that your users are getting ripped off on quotes? Do you not care that they are getting KYC'd and funds potentially frozen? Do you not care that like this is bad reputation for you, right? You have to fix it for your users. But yeah, I mean, surprisingly, often they might not prioritize that because again, these are product managers. They're building their complex products, right? They have a lot to think about, and maybe swaps are just one of them. So there's a lot of also like grants and bribes going on. Some of these providers they give like 100K, like a lot of grants to be integrated, right? So they're entrenched in products already. Yeah, I think there's a lot of these barriers we have to overcome, and yeah, sometimes it's just like it's like easy to look at what we're doing in our corner of the overall kind of marketplace, but yeah, I'm just kind of outlining some of the challenges of why users may not be using decentralized services or THORChain in particular.
I'm glad you brought that up because that's what for me, I find a little bit frustrating. Like I think a lot of us in crypto, everyone's pretty idealistic, and it's like, oh, we should, it's obvious THORChain is better, everyone should use it. But all the same games that exist in TradFi exist in crypto. So like you mentioned, the centralized services are like paying 100 grand or whatever to stay integrated in a platform. Like that, I mean, that exists all over the world. Like I used my I did a post the other day about the beer, comparing the beer industry to THORChain. Um, like Bud Light and Budweiser and Heineken, all these like Coors Light and these name brand beers, like they pay to have their beer on tap at bars. They'll pay like, I don't know, 1 to 2 grand per tap type thing. And it is illegal. They're not allowed to do it. But they get around it by like, they come in, their rep will come in and buy like, 100 beers a month type thing. And it's just this unwritten thing in the restaurant industry. And so like the craft beer people, they can't afford to go around all these bars and pay like 1 or 2 grand to get their beer on tap. And, because they're small, they're tiny, they're very limited. And so
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
so then they're out of the game. You either got to play the game or you're out of it. And it's just the way it goes. So for me, this is my thing with THORChain and marketing, and like we gotta start playing the game. It sucks, it's gross and it's dirty, but like, if we really want to get THORChain huge and like topple all of those guys, we have to be on the same field as them, playing in the same game, right? If you can't win the Super Bowl if you're just in your backyard throwing the ball with your buddies, like that doesn't make any sense, right? We have to get on the field and play the same game, and whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter. It's just how it is. and we have to acknowledge that reality and start playing in it. So I'm not saying we have THORChain has to run around and bribe everyone to get THORChain into the platform. But maybe we do start doing that next year. I don't know, right? Like it's something we have to think about and talk about. Because like you're right about these platforms having these sexes. Like it is so horribly irresponsible to have a self-custody wallet and route a trade through a sex. Like it is just it blows my mind that exists. It goes against everything about crypto and trying to protect your user, with the risk of their funds getting frozen. Why are they doing that? Because they're getting paid. Like the sex is giving them kickbacks or whatever. Like it all comes back to the dollar, right? And so, not everyone is as idealistic as us. But I think what's cool is like THORChain, just like Bitcoin is a Trojan horse for freedom, like so is THORChain. THORChain is a Trojan horse for freedom too. And if we do start playing that game, and maybe we do start bribing front ends to have THORChain, and we do start getting that volume, do start getting people using us, then we start, maybe that is how we shift and change and get more users. But yeah, I'm just bringing this up to highlight it, that it isn't as simple as just, oh, here, create this awesome product, and now everyone is going to start using it. It's like, no, there's tricks and games and everything being played behind the scenes that it doesn't make it that simple. So yeah, rant over.
Yeah. If I mean, the three post was like very detailed. Actually, I didn't think about this analogy before. But it's slight devil's advocate, if I may. Um, I, in my mind, I think Thorchain's product is not the bear itself. It's the distribution. It's a distributor. It's a distribution channel. When the person goes to the bar, like what they want is like you mentioned, like Budweiser, like whatever beer, right? So in this case, like they want Bitcoin to Ethereum, right? Or they want Bitcoin to XRP. And they don't really care which distributor gives it to them, which is why we have this problem. It might be centralized providers, it might be whatever. For the wallets, it's just like, okay, our users want this product, and the product it's not Thorchain, it's asset A to asset B, right? And so they're taking up those boxes, and Thorchain is a distribution channel, so it's not like you don't evaluate it based on, like necessarily. I mean, I think marketing is obviously great, but what really the success depends on is like efficiency, security, like decentralization, and like making sure it just works, right? Like you don't have cases where user funds are frozen, you don't have like cases where swaps are not working, right? Or like they're refunded or they're stuck, or all these things that makes a distribution channel like really, really successful. So that's kind of where I mean we've talked about this in the past, like that, like I said, that's historically that's how blockchain shifted from saying like, hey, we want to use the treasury to fund our own front end, this is, you come here to swap, right? Bet swap, to saying, hey, anyone can use, to build like a company or a product, services based on our distribution channel. And then our goal was to like get it out to like everyone, right? um and that was the whole thing we talked about for ages, about how like people be using Thorchain, they just wouldn't know it. And I think in terms of competing against that, you have this like, it's a catch 22. Like I see the importance of accruing value to Rune, and obviously Rune is entrenched in the overall model of Thorchain, right? You need room price to go up because otherwise that's why products like lending and savers like failed, right? And that's why like we have economic security problems if room price is not the thing. So I see the point in that. At the same time, it's very hard for any ecosystem project or what have you to say like, hey, come build using us, like open arms, we have the best tech, we have the stuff that's really important. And also be like entering this whole, oh, but at the same time, like like how do you justify like the grants for integration if you're trying to also uh talk about like, okay, how much should front ends get paid versus how much should different parts of the system get paid. I think these are sometimes very, it is very complicated from a business model perspective, right? And yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, and I talked to like Wallace about this as well. Like, you should label, say some providers are like, centralized or decentralized. I think we used to say that more nowadays, not so much. I say that to every wallet, but hardly ever happens. And yeah, I think the overall like execution is really really important. I think price execution is important. So streaming swaps definitely help that a lot, but at the moment, the economic model of THORChain is a little bit difficult, right? And and I guess like the important thing is to try and fix that, and also, like Patriots said, um, add more unique routes, and then really kind of hone in on like how to get those ecosystems interested in these in the THORChain routes. I personally, I don't think there's a lot of point in kind of spending all the energy kind of debating on like, oh, how much front end should charge versus like vice versa. Like, I'm fully, comfortable with like, okay, hardware wallets like charging 150 bips, some wallets charging 200 bips, but it's just the nature of how they do their business. And like, and you can't really, really kind of get into this argument of like, what is that worth, right? Yeah, I don't know if that perspective makes sense.
Come on, I'm just gonna back it up just a little bit here, because I think you thought I was changing the subject earlier. Definitely not, because like the point that Kenton was making, this kind of goes into what you're saying, paper is, if you have an interface and they have many different providers facilitating the swap, right? Not necessarily goes through THORChain. I think that's quite obvious. But the thing that I've just come to experience is, and I don't want to take credit, because I know THORSwap and many others have been talking to the XRP community. But if you look now, the XRP pool is like the second highest APR, and it's only being topped out barely by the TCY pool, right? And I think, this took a lot of work, like 2 months of just, really meeting these people. And I wasn't expecting to do this at all, but I really like them. And now I kind of have, I have friends and stuff now. But I think one of the things is, we have to just tell these people that this is an ability. I think from one thing I've learned is that they just had no idea that this is an option and why it's important. And it was an easy sell, really, to XR, because it makes total sense, right? Because that was a community that was quite literally subjugated by a centralized entity like the SEC, saying they were security and nope, you're done, right? And we give them a pathway now where that never has to happen. That's why I was kind of angling with you about Tron. Is I'm not an expert on Tron, but my understanding is like there's a lot of Mandarin speakers there, right? And I don't know. I have a suspicion that Tron people might be really interested in having non-permissionless, non-KYC access to like a stable coin, like especially a lot of Chinese. I think that might be something they're very interested in. So that was kind of like my pitch to you was, I think this is a good blend of both worlds where THORChain gets more volume and THORSwap gets more volume, because I believe you speak Mandarin. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I don't know that, but if you have anyone who's interested in reaching out to the Tron community, please do that, because I really think that we're onto something here. If we just I think we just need to tell people. We just need to tell them why it matters and why it's important. And we have now a builder on the XRP like Zoj. He's extremely passionate about THORChain. His eyes have been open. He's so thankful that now he can, do cross permissionless swap within the thing. That's what he's always wanted to do, and has been trying to source the talent within the XRPL. It's just the technology's not there. It's not from a lack of trying. But now we just given it to him. We've kind of like just busted out of the bushes and said, hey, you can do this now. I really think that might be an angle for you, buddy, with the Tron community. I could be wrong, but that's just what my gut tells me.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of well, actually, if you look at the on-chain metrics, there's a lot of flow between centralized exchanges and Tron, for USDT. And I do believe there is a use case for Bitcoin to USDT flow. Like, this is my suspicion. I need to validate it, but I'm sure there are some miners who might want to take profits on their Bitcoin without doing KYC. So I'm definitely actively looking for those opportunities and market segments. And yeah, absolutely. You'll see us do more with the Tron community soon. I'm definitely trying to reach out to them. I was just talking with them today, actually. Uh, actually, like Justin's taking a space shuttle flight, and yeah, gonna join a little like video they're gonna make about welcoming back to Earth. So yeah, definitely reaching out to the electronic community to kind of like get that conversation started. They have a lot of protocols on there as well, and hopefully we can do some interesting things. But I mean, you brought up the liquidity thing, right? And that's another. This is the THORChain space, and I think we can talk about the THORChain. So, like, I think for me, um, I'm just I mean, this has been kind of beaten to death already, right? We were talking about like the limitations of the V2, liquidity model, and like my worry about like reaching out to these communities and saying like, hey, you should like LP on Thorchain is that it is really risky, right? It's so risky that like rune holders don't even want to LP, like they want to bond rune instead of LPing. Like I think
I'm not telling the XRPers to LP. I'm not even telling them to buy Rune. I'm not telling them to do any of that. I'm telling them that they can make swaps. I'm telling them they have the
yeah, of course. I
capability,
think
right?
but the thing, the two kind of goes hand in hand, right? Because without deep liquidity, the swap execution suffers, right? So that's what I'm saying like, our focus really should just be improving execution, right? Because without execution, it's like you can't. I think decentralization matters obviously as well, right? But we have to try and beat decentralized services on all fronts, like not just like, oh, of course you should choose decentralized services, but in yeah, there's just a lot of areas we could improve on, and we've got a lot of protocol and liquidity, and trade assets obviously helps, but I think some of that kind of I mean, this is all me kind of just thinking out loud, and maybe I'm not the most of the top up to date about THORChain as well, because I often we've got a lot of things being developed, right? But TCB, I always thought he suggested like, oh, we should move towards a more like concentrated liquidity model, or even just like straight up building intense on THORChain, right? Versus maybe trade assets is kind of like really performative, right? A performance, and it's helping a lot of trades like go through really well. And and it kind of leaves us with this whole like, is the current liquidity model working, right? And is the current decentralization security model working well? Because obviously now this is like off topic again, but yeah, I think I'm just like overall it's a really big picture, right? I think because blockchain works well when everything's working in harmony, right? The sentiment pendulum, you've got like obviously all of that is what makes swaps work well, right? So and obviously as long as swaps works well, we've got a great product. So but underneath there's so many little like gears that we're constantly like tweaking and discussing, right? Like, so yeah, I just I'm just picturing this out as a conversation like about how we can improve that.
Yeah, for me, I just with the LP and all that stuff, I'm really not even that concerned with POL, because I know like the Treasury will seed, excuse me, the pool, and the efficiency of THORChain means that really big swaps can go through with a really small liquidity in the pool. And how phenomenal the technology is. My point, all I want to do right now is just get people knowledgeable about THORChain and get people swapping. To me, that's just first principle. That's what we should focus on. I'm really sure. I think about these things a lot too. I'm pretty sure we can fix them. It's not a big deal. The goal for me, and like if I'm THORSwap, is just I just want to keep people swapping. I just want them to know that they can swap permissionlessly now to a variety of layer ones. And when it comes to pool liquidity, depth, and being an LP and all that stuff, for me, that just clouds the issue. All I want to communicate to them is you can now do a thing that you could have not done before. And this empowers you A, B, C, D, E, F, right? All these things. That's my main pitch. And I think if we just focus on that, I think everything else just falls into place. And particularly too, like when they dip their toe into THORChain, then you can like segue like, hey, there's gonna be point of sale applications coming. There's gonna be Rajira, all these different things. I don't even try to complicate the issue for me. Like, it's just keep it simple, low cognitive burden. You now can swap. Come swap here. Let's go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we align on that, right? Because we are front end after all. So as far as SwapSwap, especially Rune Edition, is concerned, like yeah, making sure the UX is as close as perfect, or better if not, then centralized services is kind of our goal, right? So yeah, again, this is because I'm on a THORChain space, so I'm talking about THORChain things. Obviously, I'm not talking about the stuff to like a user necessarily. And I mean, sometimes it's kind of difficult because, like I said, it's really about execution. It's about stability. It's making sure, if we say this is what the service does, it works, right? And unfortunately, it's like when something goes wrong, is then we kind of have to like figure out, okay, what is the explanation we need to give to the user, right? And how do we resolve the issue so they don't lose faith in the service or product, because it doesn't take it's really hard to gain user trust, and it's really easy to lose it, right? And the irony is, like, we're trying to convince users to trust a trustless system, right? And like, kind of, so front ends, we sit in the middle between users and the protocol. And yeah, I think on one hand, like, we just need to tell the users, like, hey, this is what you can do. It's decentralized. This is why it's better. But on the other, it's like I have to do this kind of stuff where I just want to make sure that the protocol is working well. And if it's something happens, I have to ensure that users are also protected, and they're made whole or just satisfied, so that they continue using THORChain, right? Continue using THORSwap. Otherwise, if we lose them, it's not like, oh, like we lost the user to THORChain or any of the other providers. Is we lost the users to DeFi in general. Like they probably would just go somewhere else and use centralized exchanges, right? And yeah, that's kind of where I come from.
Paper, you mentioned you've been talking to other XRPL projects. Can you expand on that? Like who are they? What are they? What do they do? How do you integrate them into THORSwap? Like what does that all look like?
I think most of them are more like, Swapkit, kind of like B2B type stuff. So I say I really mean Swapkit on that front. I'm kind of full time, mostly on THORSwap. So I still wear like an APAC role for advisor for Swapkit, which is why I'm in Vietnam. But at the same time, is because I also, to elaborate on your point, yes, I do speak Mandarin. Sorry, I think you asked that question like 3 times. I keep forgetting to answer you. And yeah, I mean, I've been hammering this for years. I've been contacting, like Chinese crypto media for years about THORChain. Like, by this point, it's like my side project for a long time. So yeah, so that's kind of like what I'm still working on, and then I think there's a lot of synergy there. But sorry, to go back to your question. Yeah, I don't know if there's any we can announce necessarily, but it's more like, being able to tap into THORChain, services for through Swapkit to enable like onboarding users from other ecosystems and XLPR projects, right? So yeah, that's kind of all I can say at this point.
Okay, fair
It's
enough.
it's not necessarily THORSwap related, so I'm not gonna like speak on behalf of like the Swapkit team about that.
Okay,
Anyway.
yeah. Can you? Okay, so I don't know, Patriot, if you want to keep anything about that. I kind of want to change gears a bit,
I
ask a
mean,
different
are
question.
there
Go
any
ahead,
on top
change
of
it.
your mind that like XRPL projects that could the services that they would want on THORSwap? Or maybe I missed something, like, like, for example, the Tron thing I mentioned, right? Like, we try to build some kind of like, energy claiming thing so that users can swap USDT for cheaper on Tron. That's something like I'm looking into for THORSwap, because it really improves the user experience for Tron users, right? So if there's something like that for XRPL that I missed, like, I'm always open for suggestions and feedback for sure.
Well, I'm gonna say it again. First Ledger, the XRP meme coin DEX, like, Solana's entire success is meme coin trading. That's where all their volume is, right? Pump.fun, right? All meme coins. Like, you said it beautifully earlier, Paper. Like, it's not up to us to comment or decide on how people spend their money, how they want to trade. We just want them to trade, right? We don't care what it is. We just want that flow. And what if the XRP starts doing great and their meme coin sector starts going up? Like that's a huge audience of Solana and Ethereum meme coin traders. If they want to start getting into the XRP meme coins, like THORChain or THORSwap, can be like that route, that pathway. If we make it easy for them to do it, maybe they'll start doing it. right now it's I don't know if it's even possible. You probably have to, maybe you have to go through a SEX. Maybe you got to sell Ethereum to Ripple. Well, actually, you can sell Ripple on THORChain now. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't even know how to buy an XRP meme coin. It might be quite difficult. But if we make it easy, then maybe we see lots of flows go in there. And if we're the only provider, the only route, like that could be huge. Now again, I'm saying that as if it's easy to do. Like, if it's like thousands of dev hours and like hundreds of thousands of dollars to deliver, I get it. Maybe you got to stop and think whether it's worth it. But as a non-dev, you think everything's easy, right? But yeah, so just in my mind, it's
No,
like
I'm
it's worth
definitely really
exploring.
open to. Yeah, definitely really open to exploring it. I think often it's like a cultural, ecosystem culture and use case thing. I can give a few examples of like past experiences, right? Like we shipped quite a few DEX education before, and sometimes we also ship just like single chain, on THORSwap, right? So you can swap, like actually just you can swap Jupiter tokens on THORSwap right now. It's like all of it for free. Like but I think we haven't seen that much usage, to be honest. Like I think until we have like the segregation where you can go from any Jupiter token to Bitcoin. I think we just haven't seen that capture of users. From Jupiter. And if you look at Jupiter, actually, they're like an aggregate, right? Like they don't even show where the liquidity is coming from, like on Solana that they're sourcing it from. Like you just go use Jupiter, right? Like they like us, we actually show like here's the providers. But then like that's their business model, and then there's people who use those like trading bot like platforms that tap into Solana and BNB meme coin ecosystems. Like I don't know, like Bitcoin, BullX, Axiom, GMGN, like all these, like Banana Gun, like they come and go, right? They're so that space is so competitive, and what they're competing on is offering, something more unique to users, which is essentially like they're willing to charge, 1% or whatever higher fees, like 100% something, right? Like because their users think like, oh, if you give me a, I don't know, like like 0.1 second advantage, I get, like I get a sniper pool, and then that's how I make my profits. I don't care about like, you charging extra, right? No one's saying like, oh, why do I pay more for Axiom versus just swapping on Jupiter? Well, it's because or Pump Fund, because you snipe the pool faster, and then that's their value proposition. So you've got these very unique cases, and they can justify like, okay, users coming to use my service rather than whatever this other service is. So yeah, so in the past we've integrated, like I said, I think we supported like option dexes and I mean, you can still swap Pancake, on THORSwap and things like that. But it actually like there hasn't been a lot of cases where the collaboration has gone both ways. It's interesting, you talk to these dexes, they are very entrenched in single chain ecosystems, and there hasn't been a lot of interest in saying like, oh, maybe I can attract Bitcoin users. Yeah, I think the perspective is very different. Like we've been a multi-chain DEX from day one, so we always assume like, yeah, liquidity should flow freely. Like everyone should just swap anything to anything. But um, often it isn't the case actually with like ecosystems in particular. And yeah, it's like I'm trying to like talk to projects and discover like what is the future of like multi-chain, right? Like we think it's really like here already, because the technology and interoperability has gotten so much better than last cycle. But yeah, you still see most projects kind of building Uniswap clone, like forks on whatever chain, and they're just doing that thing like specifically on that chain. So yeah. I hope we have like good examples of this kind of mutual integration, collaboration, that kind of like brings communities and ecosystem together, like, in the future. But yeah, like you said, it's like like a lot of dev hours, a lot of resources, and yeah, again, you just can't like force people to swap, right? Like you can't force people to trade, right? You really have to offer something like really exactly what they want. So yeah, that's I don't know if that offers you any insight into the
Yeah,
question
yeah,
overall.
yeah, it does. Yeah. I'm curious. Okay, so you guys, THORSwap supports 4 different dexes: THORChain, my protocol, Chainflip, and Near Intense. Are you looking at any others to introduce any others? You talking to anybody else?
Yeah, well, so THORSwap runs exclusively on SwapKit SDK and API, and SwapKit is, I think our overall, like, for both teams, like, the goal is to, really focus on Bitcoin to anything to Bitcoin, right? That's kind of being the core focus, and obviously also just decentralized Rails, non-custodial, and obviously, like, that's was really difficult when when we first started, and then THORChain was definitely like, I don't think. Maybe there's a couple that come and go, and they said they're decentralized, but I think it's been proven that they're not. So in terms of that, like, I think last time we had this conversation around like intents and solvers, and there's definitely been quite a few that's popped up, like over the past couple of years. I would say that space like really emerged, and there's a lot, but often I honestly like ones that are really good that matches like the kind of uh like asset like amount, like the pairs, and also just like execution and being able to support like swaps at size, and being able to uh actually execute like swaps, are still pretty rare right now. And so yeah, I think it takes quite a bit of like due diligence, for SwapKit to add any provider. um and obviously a lot of dev hours. So yeah, at the moment it's for providers, but it's a lot
And
of just keeping an eye out on the space, obviously.
so let's talk about Near Intense. There's some people are saying it's quasi-centralized, settlements happening off chain. Other people say no, it's all on chain. It is decentralized. Um, can you comment on that? And because I would, after a whole discussion about routing trades through centralized uh, platforms, I trust you guys is not what you want to do. So the way I interpret your integration of Near is that you do believe and agree it is decentralized and nothing is happening off chain. Can you expand on that? Did I get anything wrong? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an engineer, but as far as I know, I believe the liquidity is all on chain. Like, whether the solvers and market makers they source the liquidity, it could be from centralized exchanges, right? But I suppose, like, I assume arbitrage bots and like, who use trade assets, like, they might be getting the liquidity from, I don't know where they get liquidity from. But like, it's, if you compare like against pure AMM, I guess the AMM is always like liquidity is just always there, right? Versus intensive solvers sometimes, I guess it's it's more like order book, like, there is a competition to solve, and it goes where the volume may be going. um but I believe like the API is all open. Like, anyone could become a solver on their intents. It's just whether you can. It's just like anyone could be arbitrager on Thorchain, right? You just need kind of, like, obviously capital, and be able to like have that competitive edge to say like, oh, I can do quant like faster than the other guy, and I can do fulfill these swaps like faster or whatever. It's a different kind of competition on an intense solvers model. But yeah, like, I think the API is like to be a solver on Near is like it's open. Like, I think they have like 5 or 8 like solvers. I think it also depends on the swap pair, right? Obviously, I think Near has a few teams they incubated themselves that might be like actively being a solver on the intense protocols. But yeah, that's.
But if
I
if
mean, there's
I'm
certainly.
if I'm going to sell 1 Bitcoin for Ethereum through Intense through Near, I send in my Bitcoin. It goes to an address, and then one of these solvers sees that and like, okay, yeah, I'll take that trade. And then they take the Bitcoin, and then they have to go. They go whatever they do. They go swap it for Ethereum, and then they deliver it to me. But in that process of whatever, air quote, whatever they're doing, couldn't they get, if they are doing
Oh
a
no,
centralized,
they're not going to swap it and then they send it back to you. It's like they have the liquidity for Ethereum already ready to go, right? And once they send it to you, it's confirmed, and then they'll get the Bitcoin that they like said they wanted to trade with you with. So it's not that's why it's so fast. They're not saying like, oh, I'll go get this liquidity and I'll come back and I'll give it to you. You know,
it's already
and
there.
that's why
It's
some of the
already
pairs
waiting.
are really shallow. Like they can't execute because there's no one like, um, being a solver for that specific pair, right? Like if you look at BNB, I think THORChain wins a lot of the quotes because there's not a lot of liquidity and solvers on that front yet on near intent. Um,
Okay. I don't understand it well enough to know one way or the other. It just keeps coming up. Some people say it's like, quasi centralized. Some say no, it is decentralized. So I'm not, yeah, I don't know. So it's interesting. I'm glad. Thank you for commenting on it. Nice to hear
I
your
mean, I
perspective.
feel like it's a spectrum, right? Like it's really about counterparty risk, and I think as far as Thorchain, like the AMM model, like when the swap is going through, the pools and the votes, it's I feel like it's definitely more permissionless compared to intense and solvers model. But you do trade off, obviously, in terms of like, obviously liquidity is RPing is, you've got like the whole risk of impermanent loss because you have like exposure to like both assets, right? Whereas in an intense solvers model you don't. Um, but the flip side to that is actually when the market extremely volatile, I think Thorchain is actually more competitive because there's a lot of arbitrage opportunities and there's I think better opportunities for trades like through Thorchain versus intense like solvers on the intense model because as far as I know, the margins are so thin that in a volatile market, it's actually quite risky to be solving quotes. So nothing's perfect, right? And this space was like constantly evolving. It's like back in the day, like Tom. I remember I was I got into THORChain. I was trying to understand how it worked, and I remember watching that video where JP still called himself a researcher, right? He was talking about like how THORChain initially explored like atomic swaps, and then realized atomic swaps like it just couldn't like solve the liquidity problem because if you're unable anyone unable to fulfill the quote for you, then you have a really terrible swap experience, right? And in a way, intense protocols like a little similar to that, where if they don't have anyone like ideally they should have like market makers always be ready with the ability to solve like solve these swaps, but there's definitely some that they should say like, hey, we can do these trades, these pairs, but if you try to do one, you either like can't execute at above a certain size, like very small size, or you might be it might be like open for 24 hours and then no one fills the trade, you automatically get refunded, or you're allowed to like cancel the trade or something, right? And that's like not a great experience. That's not the kind of experience at least we imagine users on THORSwap having. So yeah, I mean, if we wanted to add every provider under the sun out there that's like intense and solvers, so we could there's so many, but like what would be the point in that, right? Again, user experience is like super important. And yeah, I think different models have different competitive pros and cons.
Cool. Thanks. Patriot. I'm kind of running out of things to talk about. You have anything you want to keep going?
Oh, I think we've got all the points. Everyone tells us, "Hey, your spaces go on for too long." You know what I mean? And we're always getting heat for that, which is mind-boggling to me. I thought more content's better. I mean, usually we're all talk. It's like nonstop. Like we're talking Paper X, and it's just constant. Like question answer, question answer. It's just good info. But Paper X, I'll give the floor to you. Do you have anything you otherwise want to talk about? Anything we missed? Anything you want to clarify? Yeah, I think you've been a great speaker today.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Usually the time is like really terrible for me when I'm in New Zealand, but this time zone is slightly better. It's almost midnight here for me, but that's when I start working, so it's all good. Yeah, I think like I said, I really feel like there's so much room for DeFi to go, to flip centralized exchanges, or centralized services in general, and yeah, often, like users really want convenience, like they really want UX, like to be super solid, right? And there's still a lot also room there for us to improve upon. So, um, yeah, at the end of the day, like I think it's really difficult to say, yeah, let's try to compete on just like pricing or um, you know, uh, like I think even branding is sometimes um like we take it too seriously. I think often really it's about delivering good service because the brand can only take you so far, right? THORSwap, I'm not gonna be, like I'm not going to pretend that obviously we've benefit a lot from the association with THORChain and just like reputation, right? But I would like also think that we've built that reputation over. I mean, it's like we're supposed to be a trustless product, but there's a high degree of trust that we built up over the years, and it's because we really value our users, and whether it's like there's been a lot of times, and this is a bit of self-reflection, because it's the full chain space. There's definitely been a lot of times when the protocol has run into certain trouble, and I think we often think of it from the protocol's perspective of like, well, obviously if the protocol doesn't exist, then everything's gone, like that's all the value gone, right? So we should think of it from the protocol's perspective, and obviously code is law and all these things, but that's kind of the thing that like centralized exchanges and services kind of win against us on, because they're just like, wow, the space is scary, Web3 scary, you should just like trust us to like guide you through it and hold your assets in custody and safety instead. So to overcome that, that is really hard, right? Like whether it's back in the day of like room, um uh the kill switch, like migrating, like honestly 3 or 4 years of just still trying to explain to users who might have like missed that, and like why these things happen in DeFi, right? And obviously, whenever, like I remember when Luna crashed, and I'm just like, oh wow, like it's the first time we're actually gonna do a Ragnarok, like for real. Like we don't even have the code ready for it. Like we didn't even designed the system. We're just like, in theory, we are gonna do it. So these things kind of like happen in real time, and but users, they don't get that, right? They don't understand. They just like, oh, why is this not working, right? Or why is my funds, like my swap not going through, and then and every time that happens is when you lose the user to centralized exchanges. So and honestly, like, yeah, I would encourage everyone to just go out there and talk to other people about DeFi, about cross chain, about space, like THORChain, and yeah, you'll realize like there's so much like we need to kind of solve. And even to this day, like there's so many people that they either don't know about THORChain, or they remember it strictly from like, oh, didn't it get hacked a few times? Like I was like, bro, that's like 2020, right? Or like, isn't it solvent now? It's like, wow, that was like, I mean, 12.5 was like January, but it feels like a lifetime ago by this point. But it's hard to say like, oh, swaps are working fine, everything's back to normal now, everything is good. It's just every time something goes wrong, it's when you kind of like, that's when you lose trust from users, and you don't get that back, right? You don't, it's not like, oh, is it intense, or is it Thorchain, is it chain fluid? It's all DeFi users. They just go straight back to centralized exchanges, and again, that's, I think, it's worthwhile for everyone to have like that focus on trying to flip like sexes, and at least I think as THORSwap, like that's kind of a big focus for us, right? And because we see the users every day, and every time if I see an issue, and honestly, like a big part of it is responsibility, right? Like if anything is a front end issue for us, like if it's our fault, like that happens, like we would refund the users, right? Because it's like, okay, we messed up, right? And if it's like a protocol issue, then we just have to do our best to try and guide the user, and hopefully they don't like give up on DeFi. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I just really want to work with the community and the ecosystem to make sure users get the experience that they deserve, right? And they don't like lose trust in DeFi.
I don't know if you have something, Kenton, but I do have a question from the audience for you, Paper. The question is, are you guys planning on adding Rujira primitives to THORSwap? Is there anything you can comment about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've released our roadmap for until the end of the year, and it really is like quite a big focus on V3 at the moment. So we're kind of going back to drawing board a lot of things. So yeah, I really can't commit to it, like this, well, this will end the next quarter, unfortunately. And yeah, I mean, but I'm definitely really like hoping Rajura really builds great products and takes THORChain to the next level, right? And hopefully once we get the core swap experience, V3, and also, like I did tease that we kind of ambitiously looking to build a like a more streamlined, simple onboarding, like brand application to really like help new users onboard onto DeFi. So that's like a bit of quite an ambitious project we're working on as well. So yeah, I think it's I laid out the roadmap for THORSwap until the rest of the year. So at the moment, no, but obviously we're in touch with Ruggiero team and really supportive of them, and hopefully I would love to see more liquidity and usage coming to the app layer.
Yep. Okay, Kenton, were you going to say something?
No, keep going.
Okay, well, that was all the questions I have. I think we had a pretty comprehensive conversation today. I'll make a quick pitch to the audience if anyone wants to, have any questions or anything like that for PaperX. We have them. How are you looking on PaperX? I know you're at a conference, man. If you need to skedaddle, don't feel pressured to stay here. You've given us.
It's okay. It's like it's midnight. I think they have the after party, which is literally at a club that goes on to like forever.
Yeah.
And I just literally skip that because there's no way I could be on the space and at the club. So it's okay.
Okay, man. Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, it's awesome.
What I sacrifice for you guys, right?
Yes. Yeah, I know. You know what? The people who live on that side of the world, this is a really bad time for you. And I know Jane, you and others often sacrifice your sleep to come have a conversation with us. Whenever I collab.
Oh, speaking of that, I met the legend Sam Yap the other day in person.
Let's go, dude. I'm so jealous.
That was crazy. That was crazy, man. It's so surreal. Like I met Jane
That's
last year as
awesome.
well, man. It's super surreal. Like it's just weird because you immediately you're like, oh, we know each other for so many years, but it's the first time you met.
We do have a
Yeah.
request. My there's text. Okay, here we go. It was bugged. Let's see here. All right. Shoot. Okay, there we go. Yeah, man, that's awesome, dude. I'm really jealous of you. I love Sam. Sam was the main educator of me. Like he's the one who really took me under his wing to really show me THORChain, of course, grassroots, and then watching you as well. I back in the day, we were all strangers back then, but now it's weird. We've all known each other for 4 or 5 years. And it's really cool meeting people in real life. I cannot emphasize this enough, guys. I've said this before. Please go to conferences, meet THORChads in real life. XRPers in here, they know all about that. They go and meet each other. That's why there's such a strong community. Is because they meet each other and then they organize. Hey, let's do this, let's do that, let's build this, let's build that. The human touch, the human element is crucial. It is crucial. Kenton and I have been doing this a while. We haven't met each other in real life. That's a shame. We're going to change that at some point, I'm sure. It'll just make us, there's just a certain amount of like trust and that you can never get to, even though I completely trust Kenton, but like just, meeting someone, hearing their voice in real life, making eye contact, shaking hands, that is so powerful. And yeah, man, I'm so happy you met Sam Yap. I got to meet him too. It's a damn shame I haven't. Last pitch. I don't know. The other speaker did not come up. To the audience, if anyone has anything, please let me know. And I am sorry, guys, if the comment section is bugged. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's just the way it is. X Spaces. I'm just thankful that this X Space is stable today, and we haven't been randomly rugging 4 times in rapid succession. So I count my blessings whenever we can host these and not die. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm looking at the comments and I don't think I see any, but maybe it's just
Yeah,
for
it sucks.
everyone.
I can't even see them as a co-host. How ridiculous is that? It's absurd. Yeah, cool. That's awesome, man. Kenton, were you gonna say something?
No, I think we start wrapping it up.
All right. Cool.
This has been great. Thank you, Paper.
Oh, good. Yeah, I always try to tune into these, but it's really difficult on timing. But yeah, I'd love to chat with the community. If you see if we come cross paths in like conferences or in real life, definitely say hi. I must say, like all the THORChain users and that I've met in person have been like amazing. So yeah, I think it's definitely like I always love like just good vibes in general. So I know there's like often debates and drama that may happen here on Discord, but good vibes is what we're aiming for.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Good vibes for sure. And I hope everyone's feeling good. I mean, we have, swap volume's a little low right now, but we've got so many things going in our direction right now. We have so many amazing teams like THORSwap building. The devs are shipping like crazy right now. Insane the amount of commits that they're pushing. It's wonderful. Just to go over, guys, the next space we're going to be talking, I believe this is correct, Voltisig. I think that's right, Kenton. Really looking forward to that. And then we're actually a little mature now. We have the next space as well figured out. It's going to be Rajira. We're going to be talking with Pragmatic Monkey. He's going to be demonstrating some things. He's going to put some resources together. So tune in for the following week for that. So that's really exciting, guys. I always like to do a pitch and remind people. I'm going to say it blue in the face. Hopefully people don't get annoyed with me. Please always keep Maya Protocol on the back of your mind. The world has not figured out they have non-KYC permissionless access to privacy, Zcash. I think this is absolutely game-changing. This is a 0 to 1. It's absolutely huge. And when the world figures it out, and I don't know what's going to happen. So, but be ready. Be ready to come to their defense if they need it. Hopefully it is not needed, but be ready. Is wonderful what they did. They are our friends. They helped us in our time of need. We're going to make sure we're going to help them if they are in need whatsoever. Kenton, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, dude, you did a great job. Thank you, Paper. Thank you, Patriot. Everyone else listening. This has been great, guys. Looking forward to next week.
Right on, guys.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Hey, get a good night's sleep, buddy, and get those Tron users, buddy. I know you can do it. Good luck to you. And
awesome. Yeah, looking forward to the polls going live and everything.
Hell yeah, man. All right, everyone. Have a good rest of your weekend. Everyone take care. Bye-bye.
All right, take care, guys.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.